Formula One just applied for a trademark in a market that NASCAR recently had a big splash in, Chicago. And based on what the news is, as of January 19th, 2024, Formula One applied for the trademarks of, quote, Formula One Chicago Grand Prix and Grand Prix Chicago. And a lot of people are saying that this could be a protective measure to make sure NASCAR, who has at least a bit of a foothold now in the city, can't make their race the Chicago Grand Prix and maybe confuse F1 fans based on the name alone to go to a NASCAR race or watch one. After all, NASCAR's race at COTA has Grand Prix at the end of the name, and it could be something that is pretty big for F1 to not get confused with another motorsport in a country they're trying to build up their following in. Alderman Brian Hopkins from Chicago, who was one of those who was very much at least against or standing in the way of the NASCAR deal, had said that F1 had a 10-year requirement to be in cities and that was non-negotiable and didn't really have too much past that. But most said it came to a surprise to them that really there was no talks whatsoever of Formula One having a race in Chicago. And like I said, this really conflicts with NASCAR's presence in Chicago, as they have a bit more of a market there than pretty much any other motorsport series. Yes, they had Chicagoland Speedway for a while, and that definitely helped, but being in the city is something that was completely different and put NASCAR on another level. The street race was a hit last year. Even with record downpours, with bad air quality, with the city not really getting along with NASCAR too much, they still managed to have combined around 4.8 million viewers for the race, which was nearly as many as the Indy 500 that year. It was honestly pretty easy to say that NASCAR's race at Chicago was on the podium of biggest races in America last year, and it wasn't even close to fourth. Boosting NASCAR's ratings as well in the following weeks, like at Pocono, where they were nearly at 3 million on a cable channel with USA. It was a big deal, and NASCAR's going to want to stake their claim. Thing is, for Chicago, I don't think an F1 race will happen just yet. The NASCAR deal was shoved through by Mayor Beetlejuice for political reasons. She needed some kind of splash to stay in office, and ultimately it didn't work, and now the next administration has to deal with what she signed on for. I think the city is already trying to make their end of the deal better with different revenue splits, as well as trying to get NASCAR to agree to make the amount of time that certain streets are closed smaller this year so the city is not impacted as much. And the city being split overall and NASCAR coming back and motorsports in their city doesn't help either. And I think Formula One would be far more invasive than NASCAR. And all you got to do is look at the way that the lead up to the Las Vegas race was for them this year. They treated the Las Vegas locals awful. They took different landmarks down, changed different parts of the city, made it difficult for people who live there for months on end to get around the city or to their jobs, charged people who live there or were working there for being where they normally are, and ultimately they treated the fans pretty badly at the track. And the only real highlight was the race itself, which in my opinion does not save it per se. It really feels eerily similar to me with Formula One, the way that NASCAR felt at the start of their fall off in popularity in the mid to late 2000s, around 2007, 8, and 9. NASCAR at the time had pissed off their core fan base. They'd made a lot of changes for new fans at the expense of their old ones. And I think Formula One has done similar things, especially when you look at the last couple years and how much they played to an American audience. But now, much like NASCAR's new fan base at the time, the new American fan base growth has slowed down. They're realizing that not every year is a banger going down to the wire for a championship between two popular drivers, and a lot of times in Formula One it's a runaway. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that fans need to accept it. But expecting a bunch of people who really don't give a damn about motorsports to show up for races that 20 out of 28 times or whatever it is are decided for Max Verstappen in the first lap, it's not really going to help. And the USA base has stopped or at least slowed in growth compared to what F1 was getting before when they were skyrocketing through the motorsports landscape here. It's oversaturating as well with the new base. They have 3 races in America now: Miami, Texas, and Las Vegas. And if they get Chicago and don't replace any of those other 3, they will have 4 races in America, which, while being a pretty big country, is still pretty big oversaturation when you really have a new foothold here, and not like NASCAR where you've been in the country your entire existence for over 75 years. And in my opinion, a clash between the motorsports entities of F1 and NASCAR in America is coming. I don't think it's necessarily going to be one taking out the other, but it's pretty clear that Formula 1 and NASCAR were going to have to fight over the same motorsports base in a lot of ways. Yes, F1 has a younger base overall and percentage-wise, but NASCAR has around the same number, just a lower percentage, and they have a lot more hardcore motorsports fans. NASCAR in America is king with motorsports, and F1's a distant second. They're ahead of IndyCar now, I'd say, but honestly, NASCAR is a whole nother beast. It's kind of similar to the way NASCAR tried to overcome the NFL. It didn't work, and they should have just found their place in the American sports landscape. F1 is now facing something similar, and, well, NASCAR does hold a lot more when it comes to the United States threshold than F1 at the moment does. F1 has that coveted young demographic that NASCAR desperately wants, but also F1 is on the offensive in America. They are trying to get areas that NASCAR has not really capitalized on. The Texas market with COTA. It's a market that NASCAR has always struggled in. Even back in the 70s with Texas World Speedway, they've never been honestly that good when it comes to bringing in fans in Texas. The Miami market has seen NASCAR fall off over the years, and F1 is jumping on it. And the Las Vegas market with NASCAR is hit or miss, but generally it's just sort of mid in the middle. And I don't think that F1 is honestly choosing that market just because of how big in America it is. NASCAR does have the larger markets of Chicago and Los Angeles, as well as some pretty big ones like Nashville and Atlanta. But NASCAR's new contract may bring a bit of problem when it comes to bringing new viewers in, as it's very cable heavy, and now you do have streaming, which will probably bring in younger viewers, but it's going to be pretty difficult to keep your older ones. I think F1 will try at least to keep taking big swings at NASCAR though. I think they're going to reach into NASCAR markets that maybe they're a little bit better in, but they might be able to take a chunk out of and slowly but surely have a death by 1,000 cuts to the NASCAR side of things. And big US events may go against big NASCAR events on days and times, similar to the way that American races have went up against, say, races like Martinsville or races like Darlington. Big NASCAR events and big draws for core NASCAR fans. They will not be working together. It's business. I know that fans just want to be kumbaya about it, but neither of them are going to be having double headers with the other and vice versa and any kind of working together. I could see similar strategies being used, but that's about it. Ultimately, I do think that NASCAR will stay ahead of Formula 1. F1 is seeming to kind of hit its crest in America, and I think now needs to find its place in the American market and then focus on growth from there. Whereas NASCAR can fall for another 10 years at the rate they've been in the last couple or the last 5 to 10, and they'd still be ahead of Formula 1. So that's what I think. Now I want to know what you think. How do you think NASCAR and Formula 1 will fit into the U.S. racing market together? Is it going to be an amicable kind of deal, or is it going to be a war to the final race? Be sure to let me know down below. And also, be sure to check out the NASCAR Weekly Podcast Season 7 premiere tomorrow night, January 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on this channel. Going to be a ton of fun, and hey, maybe we'll even talk a bit about this. So, until then, have a good one.